We're here. We're talking about some of the things we just pulled up on YouTube. So we're gonna, well, not that we just pulled up on YouTube. We just posted on YouTube so that everybody could get a hold of us. And we're gonna start with stoicism. And Randy, I wanted to hear what you thought about stoicism.
I think stoicism is a very valuable philosophy. I think it's you could call it a working man's philosophy, a man of action philosophy. You know, it's most philosophies are very scholarly in their approach. It's something you sit down, you discuss ideas and forms and theory. And and while Stoicism does have that, Stoicism has its own views on science. Some of the things actually 2,000 years ago they did get right about scientific theories that we know today. But I think the most valuable thing about Stoicism is its mantra to focus on what you can control and be indifferent to the rest. I think it also teaches you that your quality of life is dependent on the quality of your thoughts. I think it also teaches you a very important lesson about not being very reactive, focusing on being active in your search for reason and logic, and not allowing kind of the racehorses of emotion to pull you along. To find the space in between your initial feeling of that emotion and the actual response. Find the space in between that to provide yourself some peace. It's been very helpful to me.
So if somebody was to practice stoicism compared to practicing like a common religion like Christianity or Judaism, what would you do differently that would make you considered to be on more of a stoic path rather than a religious path? What separates the two?
Well, for one, Stoicism isn't a religion. That's probably the biggest thing that separates the two. The second thing is that they're more connected than you believe or than you'd first assume. Christianity pulled a lot of its sayings from Stoic thought, from Stoic teachers. Stoicism and Christianity actually vibe pretty well. Their biggest difference, I think, would be the fact that Christianity makes you feel guilty for being alive, whereas Stoicism does not make you feel that way. Stoicism teaches you that you are very similar to the finger on your hand, that you are an extension of the universe. You are an extension of whatever that is, and because of that, you are like the finger upon your hand. You are part of a process, and thus you should do what it is in your nature to do. I think Stoicism really, I guess, another difference would be Stoicism teaches you to not be affected.
With just that difference, I'll tell you that Christianity, to me, these people that practice Christianity do not have a need to follow a certain thing. The reason I say that is because the majority of Christians believe that Jesus died for their sins.
Yeah.
And they can just sin as much as they want because Jesus already paid himself for these sins that they're already ready to commit.
Right.
So I also don't feel like these people are following a certain path. I still feel like there's different levels of Christianity, of course. There's the Amish, which are way more strict than certain others. And then I would see somebody there's the person that doesn't go to church and says, I'm, a Christian that just is in touch with God on my own level.
I think the problem with modern Christianity, that I guess, in some ways, when Christianity began, had the same problem, is that there's so many versions of how to practice it, whereas Stoicism has one version. There's one way. I think what Stoicism provides you most is the realization that it's not that other people cause you to feel a certain way. It's that you allow yourself to feel harmed, insulted, whatever the case may be. And then it's really your perception of that thing, of that, the judgment of that thing that is causing you an issue. It's not the thing itself. Whereas, I think Christianity provides you with this idea that there is a clear evil there is a clear negative, and that you should oppose that at all costs.
Clear that.
For example, Christianity and sexuality. Look at all the harm that Christianity has caused towards the natural way of human beings. It is.
Well, do you think that was? I mean, because what people like to reference a lot is like the Crusades, like the Christian Crusades, and they try to use that as an example of people trying to pass Christianity onto a higher belief. And I really don't think they're pushing a Christian message at that point.
Well,
like we've talked about before, I think that man's interpretation of religion, or what God's word is a lot different than what we read in the Bible, and our depictions of what King James decided to lay before us, or whatever version of the Bible you happen to choose. It was written by white male hierarchies. And I don't necessarily think it puts women in a fine light, and I don't necessarily think it puts civilization in a fine light in general.
But you have to understand the culture from which Christianity was born out of. First of all, Christianity was never born out of simply the Levant, born out of Israel. Christianity was born from a complex situation where you had the Roman Empire at its zenith. You had a group of very religious Jews who felt, and this is something that a lot of people don't realize, the Jewish people were very rebellious. They did not like being controlled. They definitely didn't like being told that they had to, for example, like the Roman Empire forced the Jewish people to pay taxes for their religious festivals. They forced the Jews to kind of give offerings to the Roman emperor, and that went directly against their religion. Jesus, in reality, was more akin to Ragnar Lothbrok of the Viking sagas. I mean, was he a peaceful man? Yes. But the difference was that, or the similarity was, was that Jesus in himself was a rebel. Jesus in himself stood against the Roman Empire. It wasn't, for example, most of the Revelations, like the work in Revelations, where that it's the part of the Bible that everybody loves to read, the end. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What's gonna happen next? The exciting part, right? Which really the Bible actually has a lot of good stories. As a book, it's actually very knowledgeable. It can teach you a lot about life. But besides that point,
I think the parables are the most positive part about religion. I mean, if anything you can take from religion, whether it's not to follow man law or to at least follow these parables that will make you a better person, that's the best thing. But if you need religion as a crutch in life, I think it's detrimental to your life, and that's where I think it's got its negative aspects.
But I think that ultimately human beings are always going to be a slave to something. What better thing to be a slave to than virtue? I mean, this is the one thing that I do agree with about organized religion, is that the truth is a lot of humans, I do not agree that human beings are born evil, but I definitely agree that human beings without some sort of fear or respect for higher ways of thinking, without that, we're all a bunch of barbarians, and the odds that your neighbor would try to come and rob you for your resources is very high in a world where you don't have anything above you that's going to give you a good reason for being virtuous. I mean, do I think that's good? No, I think human beings should just practice being virtuous naturally without thinking about it. So but again, that's not something that we seem to be good at. We seem to be very violent. We seem to be very willing to go that extra mile in that way. And I think that religion, the one thing religion does offer is that. I think it helps offer people a more peaceful way of living.
Well, so with that, do you think that I almost lost my thought. do you think that there's people that if they were following stoicism, they would feel differently as humanity than people that are like, all right, so when shit really hits the fan, you worry about your immediate, you worry about your family, you worry about yourself, you worry about your bubble
Right.
that you can protect.
Right.
Are you going to act differently in stoicism than you would do in any other religion? And I think that just comes down to personal commitment to anything, whether it's religion, stoicism, or anything. Are you going to be more virtuous to others in those situations, or are you still going to act in a humane action of being like, I need to protect my immediate, my family, myself as an individual? Or are you going to worry about, are you going to be more virtuous as a stoicist and worry about others and the greater good?
That's a challenging question, but I would say it's challenging because Stoicism tells you to act within the bounds of your nature. What it doesn't, so what that means is to act within the bounds of your human nature. What does a bee do? It pollinates flowers, so bee acts within its nature. Likewise, a human, in a situation where you're dealing with possible violence towards you and your own, and you're dealing with the breakdown of society, I would say that the most reasonable course of action would be to first and foremost take care of you and your own, take care of your family. If you can help people around you, do so. If not, do not worry about it.
Just
I think personally, this is my personal opinion. I think if Stoicism was practiced in schools, that most young people would not grow up with the belief that they are struggling with depression, anxiety, bipolar, ADHD. So, it's not because I don't believe these things are real. It's simply because I don't believe that kids are given the actual tools when they are young to deal with these feelings and thoughts that they have on a daily basis. And I think it's really to the detriment of us as a society. I think the fact that we teach religion but don't give them any details, we tell them stories, but we don't really teach them why or like the mechanics behind what you're doing. For example, Stoicism, when it teaches you
and there's
focus on what you can control and be different to the rest. I mean,
there's telling people, but there's telling people the stories and then giving them the tools to comprehend those stories and to deal with them and apply them to your everyday life. If you were just hearing a story and it's going in and out of your ear, like, yes, I understood it.
Well, for example,
and you don't have the tools to apply it to your actual life and know how it would correlate, then you're actually not learning something from that parable or that lesson.
For example, we in schools, this is an interesting one to me. We have kids who struggle to focus. We have kids who struggle to come to class. We have kids who struggle to control themselves emotionally in class. I was one of those kids. I have never personally seen a meditation class in school. Now, I'm not saying that meditation should be practiced simply for the benefit of
I think it can be
healing those problems. But
with what you're saying, though, I think it can be just as valuable as recess and an everyday activity.
I do agree.
There's nothing wrong with a personal meditation, whether it's okay. Some kids only need 10 minutes.
What do we focus on, Jake?
What do you focus on?
Well, what I mean is, what do we offer these kids who have these problems? We say, here's a medicine called hydroxine.
Yeah.
Here's a medicine called Vilify.
Here's Ritalin. We want to slow you down.
So what does that tell you, though? That tells you that the education system and at large the society that we live in.
Wait. Before we go too far on this, this is our speculation and this is our opinion.
Total opinion. Yeah, total opinion.
This is our I'm giving this opinion. I'm giving this opinion on someone who has been diagnosed as being ADHD, and I was prescribed Ritalin at a young age. And when I came to about 13, 14 years old, I decided I no longer wanted to take it because it kind of made me like a zombie. Some people make the claim that I never found the mood stabilizer that was right for me. And that's why I never reached whatever potential that the doctors wanted me to reach. But at the same time, there's a balance, or sometimes people figure it out on their own. Sometimes it's more exercise. Sometimes it's getting a better sleep at night. There's a lot of things they could do it. And we just want to make sure that people don't think we're experts giving them the right way to do it.
Yeah, not at all.
But yes, continue your thought. I just didn't want people to.
It's a smart thing to do.
Yes.
Yeah, you definitely want to let them know. I think the thing is it just shows what the society values at large. And our society values handing out Band-Aids. our society values fake solutions, and they value them because the truth is that we've allowed ourselves to be put onto hamster wheels by our government, and we have continued racing on that hamster wheel day and night, and we become too busy in life to where we're not able to actually focus on what's meaningful, what really matters. We say it all the time as citizens of this country. We always say, well, we're just too busy to focus on politics, or we're just too busy to really figure out what's going on in the head of my kid, or this or that. And it is true. It is too busy, but we've created that. We've done that. We've allowed our lives to be put into that. We voted the people in who created the laws to put us in this place. It was not. Oh, good. It was not. Oh, fuck no.
And I agree. We're definitely on a system now where our younger generations are just kind of enveloped in this system where it's like, oh, you have to assimilate to what we have going on. You're not going to get too far out of the construct. Otherwise, you're considered what isn't normal and what isn't accepted in society. So there is a certain set of guidelines that you must follow in order to be even accepted or to be generalized in public as what is considered normal.
But what do you figure out as you get older? I wonder, I'm asking all three of us here. I mean, I'm asking you too, but I just feel like because you're just a little bit younger, I mean, you may not know exactly what I'm saying. What do we all realize as we get older about life and about people?
What I've learned
is that you shouldn't give a fuck what anybody thinks, because no one cares about you. No one's thinking about you. I mean, no one's like running around in the world going, I really give a shit about how Jake acts, and that just makes me angry. Or like, no one is doing that.
Well, I mean, and this started when I was 16 years old. You know? I realized the girls that were interested in me were the ones that I wasn't waiting on their hand and foot every minute. For some reason, the girls that were interested, the girls that were interested in you were the ones that you weren't paying any attention to, were the ones that you weren't swooning over. When they get older, it seems to change.
It does. They want the attention.
Of course, this is just my personal experience. Yeah. But I've started to realize that with most things, if you can't control it, you can't worry yourself with it.
But let me ask you this.
If it's out of your control, you can't put too much thought towards it, in the sense that if it's not something you're able to put any impact on, then is it really something that should bring down the rest of your day and bring down your mood as a person?
Why do they want that connection when they're older?
Because they realize because I realized there's a lot of false connections when you were younger. It's the idea that you just wanted the bad boy, or you just wanted the thing that was interesting at the moment because it was what was hip or what was cool.
Well, and now
but it's not always necessarily the best thing for you. It was what's for you in the moment.
And now what do we want from religion when we're young?
It's the same thing.
Look up at the sky.
It's the same thing.
God, why me?
It's the same thing that it's the same thing that we want from relationships, which is what I think you're touching on. Is the idea that you want something that sounds good in the beginning. Yeah. When it comes to it at the end, you want something that can prove itself to you in the end. Whether it's a relationship of somebody that's loyal to you and you're not worried about them, you never have to think about what your significant other's doing on their spare time.
And that's what stoicism provides you, the ability to recognize the evidence in your life through your actions, through your commitments. That's what Christianity, I don't believe, offers you, because Christianity, what it tells you is that through this specific man, you are given the world, the kingdom. But my problem with that is that what you're then telling everybody else in the world is you're saying that only certain people in this world have the ability to be divine. They have the ability to reach enlightenment. They have, only certain people with certain qualities can achieve that. It's the same thing if a Buddhist monk if you were to sit down with a Buddhist monk and you asked him, what does enlightenment feel like? What does nirvana feel like? If any Buddhist monk ever told you that it feels like bliss, he's lying to you. And he's not a good Buddhist monk, because a real Buddhist monk would never tell you that. Simply because if he tells you that, you will then take that as that's what it feels like to feel enlightened. And you'll get a false sense of understanding of what enlightenment, hence nirvana, actually is. You will only know what nirvana feels like if you feel it yourself. And anybody can feel it. You don't have to be a Buddhist monk to feel that. But in Christianity, in order to achieve everlasting life, you have to reach it through that man. And that's essentially saying that you're not divine, you're not good enough unless you go through him. And I disagree with that. I think that is insane to think that somehow only some of us like have these innate qualities that make us great. Like that is such bullshit. I mean, look at throughout history. The majority of great people that we consider great, that we admire, are people who did what? They worked for it. They broke a fucking sweat for it. I mean, you admire Michael Jordan for his greatness because he went to practice 4 hours longer than everybody else. I mean, you don't admire Michael Jordan.
That's not the part that they admired about him. They admired the fact that he was able to.
They realize
it's the accomplishments. They don't know what work you put in. They don't care about the work you put in. They just want the.
But that's really what they admire, whether they realize it or not, because that's what gave the championships.
But the question is, does the public know what brought you to the point that you're at?
Christianity is all. You know what the funny thing about Christianity is? Christianity. This is what I call it. Christianity is all wretch and no vomit. Christianity never gets you there. Christianity says
it's the dry heat.
What you can. This is Christianity says this is what I have for you. This is what it's going to take. This is what you're going to have to be to get there. But I'm never going to really tell you how to practice said things in the moment to deal with said situations. Stoicism does offer you that. Stoicism tells you how to deal with these situations. And then it offers you the opportunity to practice those things and find out in your own life how you can apply them and how much of them you need in each situation.
So with Stoicism, instead of looking up to a religious icon, you're working on oneself rather than working on the exterior.
Yeah, you're focused on how you react to your environment, not your environment. You're focused on recognizing what is really good in the world and also recognizing what isn't, but not looking at the bad as something that you should now just utterly maybe be opposed to, but looking at it from a reasonable perspective, trying to understand it first. After understanding it, you got to first recognize in life that the sun shines on the wicked just as much as it shines on the good. So you've got to understand we all have a place here. There's a reason that these things take place. Now, after understanding that reason, if you come to it, I think then that's when you make your decision. For example, is it reasonable to defend yourself if someone comes and breaks into your home to try to hurt you and your family? Of course it's reasonable. I mean, that goes without saying.
Well, in modern society, it doesn't, because there are states where criminals are falling on knives, breaking into somebody's sunroof and suing for damages because they broke into their house and got hurt. So, I mean, it doesn't, honestly, common sense isn't too common anymore.
But common sense has nothing to do with it. It's we voted people in and allowed them to change things, and we did nothing about it.
Well, and that has a lot to do with common sense. You're voting people in that you don't know what their values are.
Our republic's failure lies solely in the individual citizens. It has nothing to do with these wolves in Washington, D.C. Those guys are stupid.
But that's the thing.
They're not even that smart.
But common sense tells you if you have a democratic system, you have to use it properly.
Yeah,
you have to vote in the people that have the values that you want.
Okay.
And if you're not, you're totally agreeing with them doing whatever they want to.
Got an example. What's the difference between a House of Representative and a senator? Do you know?
Majority?
Hold on. Do you know? Exactly. My point proven. Americans' problem lies solely in the fucking fact that none of us really respect our own power as individuals. Do you realize, as a citizen of this country, you have more power than any senator, House of Representative, president? You have the power. You give them the ability to even be in office.
So, like I said, majority is what makes the decision. If you give the power to a single individual, and that individual doesn't have your best needs in thought. Yeah, I'll be out in 1 second. If they don't have your best thoughts in mind, then that could make the difference, because they could be pushing an agenda that's not what you wanted.
But
Just
that's
because
why
they put a false
that's
narrative
why-
forward to get you to
That's
that
why
point.
Americans should love their politics, because that's the exact power you have. But boys, I think we gotta get going anyways.
But that was a good preamble.
good one.
And if you guys want to check out another video with me and Randy, feel free to let us know, and we'll get another one up soon. Thanks, guys.